Good evening, everyone. It is 7:01, and I'd like to go ahead and start the Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. If we could all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we begin tonight's meeting, we have a new planning commissioner, and I'd like to introduce Mr. Spadafora to everyone. He is a former Macomb Township supervisor, and he has worked on the Clinton Township Planning Commission as well. So welcome, Mr. Spadafora. Is there anything you'd like to share?
Well, thank you, with the echo. Mr. Chair. Let's see if I turn my mic off.
That might be better.
Sorry about that. First, thank you very much, Mr. Chair and fellow commissioners. I'm really happy to be back here. It's funny how fate can play a change in coming back here. We never think about it, but a little bit about me. I'm a semi-retired attorney. I'm a licensed real estate agent. And as you alluded to, I've got 10 years of experience on the Clinton Township Planning Commission. And when I reached out after I moved into the township, to our new supervisor, Mr. Viviano, just thing I said, I'd be interested to help out in some way, shape, or form. And he says, well, fill out the application, which I did. And I applied to several positions that I felt with my experience and credentials I was qualified for. And lo and behold, I was very surprised when he called me soon thereafter and said, we have an opening on the Planning Commission, and reviewed your resume and thought that I was pretty well qualified. And he said, would you be interested? And I said, well, sure, absolutely.
Sure.
So it's nice to be back. It's in a way with, the Zoom meetings or the digital platform meetings that we're doing was a continuation of obviously what we did in my previous community in Clinton Township over the last several months. It's nice to be back here live on board, at least meeting everyone initially. Hopefully, the future meetings can be done in person again as time goes on, but that obviously remains to be seen. So I appreciate it and thank you very much.
Well, welcome. Mr. Bentley, would you please call the roll?
Well, Mr. Hardy.
Here.
Mr. Tuckfield.
Here.
Mr. Provenzano. Provenzano is absent. Mr. Shudo.
Here.
Mr. Spadafora.
Here.
Mr. Oliver.
Here.
And myself, Rich Bentley. I'm here.
Mr. Chairman, Member Provenzano did contact me for the meeting, and asked to be excused.
Okay, so Mr. Provenzano is excused from the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we exclude Member Provenzano from that any and all roll call votes.
Okay. Mr. Bentley, call the roll, please.
For this, right?
For excluding Mr. Provenzano from
You need a
voting
second
tonight.
for that motion?
We do.
I'll second.
Okay, sorry. Yep.
Okay, so, okay, for Mr. Bentley, yes. Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Spadafora,
Yes.
Mr. Shudo,
Yes.
Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
and Mr. Hart.
Yes. Okay, all ayes. I'm going to change things up a little bit, and we're going to move number 6 to number 4. So election of officers.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to nominate Michael Hardy for our chairman of our planning commission.
Support.
The motion is to nominate myself to the chairman position by Mr. Shudo and supported by Mr. Tuckfield, and I accept, by the way, and Mr. Bentley Would you call the roll?
I will. Mr. Shudo,
Yes.
Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
Mr. Spatafora,
Yes.
Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Bentley, yes, and Mr. Hardy.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everybody, for your vote of confidence.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to nominate Aaron Tuckfield as our vice chairman of our planning commission.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Oliver.
Second. Oh, thank you.
No. Mr. Shudo made the motion to have Mr. Tuckfield as our vice chairperson, and Mr. Oliver made the second. Now call the roll, please.
Mr. Shudo,
Yes.
Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Spatafora,
Yes.
Bentley, yes, Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
and Mr. Tuckfield.
Same vote.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, at this time, I'd like to nominate Richard Bentley as our secretary for the planning commission.
Okay. Mr. Bentley has been nominated as secretary. Do we have a second?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Oliver has seconded the motion. Mr. Bentley, would you please call the roll?
I will. Mr. Shudo,
Yes.
Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Spatafora,
Yes.
abstain, Bentley, Hardy,
Yes?
Tuckfield,
Yes.
and Provenzano.
Okay. All right, I think that's it.
That's it. Thank you, guys, and good luck.
Yep, thank you. Moving along, approval of the minutes from, believe it or not, November 23rd. Anyone want to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, if there's no deletions, corrections, I'll move that we approve, accept the minutes.
Motion by Mr. Oliver,
Second,
seconded by Mr. Bentley. Mr. Bentley, call the roll, please.
Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Bentley, yes, Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
Mr. Provenzano. Oh. Mr. Shudo,
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
Spatafora,
Oops, sorry. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. Would somebody like to make a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Shudo made the motion to approve tonight's agenda,
Need a second.
seconded by Mr. Oliver. Mr. Bentley?
yes, Mr. Shudo,
Yes.
Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Bentley, yes, Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
and Mr. Spatafora.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. All right, on to new business. Rezoning request, agricultural AG to residential one-family urban R1. Permanent parcel 08161000005. Located on the south side of 24 Mile Road and a quarter mile east of Romeo Plank, section 16. Salvatore Deanna petitioner. Mr. Box.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned, this is south of 24 Mile between Romeo Plank and Foss Road in section 16 of the township. This is a parcel that's currently zoned agriculture, and they are seeking to have it rezoned into one-family urban or R1. All of the surrounding parcels are zoned R1 currently. Our planning consultant has taken a look at this and is in agreement, as well as our assessing department, to support such a rezoning. And I believe Mr. Deanna is on as well, should you have any further questions.
Okay. Mr. Deanna, do you have anything you'd like to share?
No, I believe Josh stated everything that should be presented this evening. I just would like to get it zoned to match the township's master plan and the adjacent properties for at some point, a future residential development. It's currently vacant. We are not farming it, and that's why we're here to get it zoned residential.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioners, does anybody have any comments? Mr. Tuckfield.
One to the petitioner, to Mr. Deanna. You said you're looking to develop this at some point. Do you have any expectation of the time frame that would be within?
Well, currently, we actually have met with the township engineer with just something very, very preliminary as far as a sketch is concerned. We also have met with the County Drain Commission and the Department of Roads. So, if everything goes well and we get it rezoned this evening, I would have to estimate within the next month or two, we would like to submit for preliminary site plan. So sooner than later.
Yeah, so fair to say that something you're moving on now is not necessarily a future consideration.
Correct, yes.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tuckfield. Anyone else? Do I have a motion?
We need to open it to the public.
Oh, sorry, thank you. At this time, let's open it up to the public at 7:12. We have anybody from the public, Mr. Box, that would like to speak?
Raise your hand if you're in the Zoom attendee list here. If you'd like to speak, I believe it's star 6 to raise your hand. Star 9, yeah, star 9, excuse me. Yes, we do have one here. Michael Mosseri. Go ahead.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Messeri. We can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay, good, thank you. I just wondered if you could explain, there's already a development to the north side of our subdivision, Westwood, and on the south side of 24 Mile. Is this going to be next door to that? And can you explain why, if it is, there's already a development in there? And I assume that that was already designated as residential. So how is this going from farming to residential R1 going to change what's there and what's coming up in the future?
Okay. And what we do is we save all of the comments till the end, and then we kind of answer them all at one time. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Yes. Amy Hedges, go ahead.
Hi, how you guys doing today?
Hearing you loud and clear. Go ahead, sir.
I was just curious, are there current drawings or current plans? Excuse me, my house is backed up to where I believe you guys are talking the location. And I'm just curious on if there's any current drawings or plans as of now.
Yeah. Well, I'll answer that question. Right now, this is just a change from agricultural to residential. Everything else will come in time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Box?
I'd say like, we're not for it. Do we get,
Go ahead.
we live here, we don't.
Well, yeah, that's what this is. So, but that's what I mean.
Mr. Camponi, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Can you guys hear me?
We can loud and clear. Go ahead,
Oh,
sir.
okay. My question is, what about the drainage? We've had issues before with this area here where I'm at behind the other farm adjacent to it. What are your plans for the drainage issues that could arise from developing that area?
Okay, thank you very much. We'll answer that in just a few moments. Anyone else, Mr. Box?
Mr. John Champion, go ahead.
Mr. Campion, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you explain to me what is going to happen with the, is there going to be like a green belt behind my house that's continued from the development from, I believe it's Wellington Estates.
Okay, all right, we'll answer that in just a minute.
Yeah, this is Terry Campion also. We do have a copy of the drawing that was established as Wellington Estates. And the street Ironwood, alongside of Ironwood, from Ironwood down to behind these properties, there is like a T-shaped part of that land. Was that going to be then rezoned and then acquired into the Wellington Estates so they can put houses directly behind? And I also wanted to comment too, to Mr. Campone's mention of the drain. That drain actually runs perpendicular to our property and then along backside of the property going towards Sequoia, which is behind the Campone property. And I think that drain was longer than what is there now, because there are a couple of homeowners that filled in the drain. And that land is very much higher behind us with the swells and then the level of where our property is, as opposed to where the new development is going to go, which is alongside of Wellington Estates. So those are the concerns that we have. And I also want to make sure we have construction entrances that, you know, for the heavy equipment, because Pinecone Drive is pretty busted up. I'm sure they're going to come out and put the dressing around the property to contain trash, but that is also a big issue. Erosion, and then hours of work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Vince Lepore, go ahead.
Mr. Labor, are you there?
Looks like you need to unmute yourself.
What about Mr. McGillis? I see Mr. McGillis up there.
Where is it? The other one I have with a hand up right now, besides Mr. Lepore, there's no name listed. It just says Galaxy S9. So go ahead and speak if that's you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening, gentlemen. I appreciate the time. I also brought up to the new area that you're talking about developing, and I do agree with the Campions that I do have concerns relative. So we have suffered probably about 20 years of flooding in our backyard. So I basically had to go through and retile my entire backyard because as Terry stated about the actual, there was never a designated drainage back there. It was actually located next to the farm property. And my concern right now is if that goes ahead and gets closed up, because you guys actually had to come out here about 3 years ago and reopen that whole side drain that allegedly was coming, I believe, partially from Clinton River as part of that drainage. I'm concerned that are we going to start seeing additional drainage or flooding back in our yards again, because it took a lot of money on my end just to get rid of the flooding in my backyard.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
There is one more.
One more?
Can we get a name for Galaxy S9?
Yeah, Galaxy S9. Can we get your name, please?
Yeah.
And address? I am sorry.
Yeah, that's Mike and Beth Bryant.
Your address too, please, Mike?
Yes, that's 18987 Pinecone Drive.
Okay. I should have asked everybody. Pine Cove. All
Okay,
right,
thank you.
thank you. And Mr. Box, who's next?
Yes, we have Vince.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, Vince, let's do this more correctly. Please state your name and address for us, please, for the record.
My name is Vince Lepore. I live at 18819 Newport. And I was just wondering if you guys have anything for widening 24 Mile Road to accept the additional traffic.
Okay, widening 24.
There's a lot of new homes going up in the area, and 24 Mile Road is already backed up along with Romeo Plank trying to go north and south. And the increase in traffic is going to slow everything down.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, Mr. Box, who would like to speak?
It looks like there's a few people who have put their hand back up. Mr. Kirk Camponi.
Kurt Camponi, 18875 Pine Cone Drive. What would our recourse be if there was any flooding issues once this project has been completed, is what I want to know too.
Okay, thank you. All right, anybody else?
And one last one, John Campion again.
John, go ahead.
Hi, John Campion. Address is 19095 Pine Cone Drive.
Yeah, and also, the petitioner should also be aware that, besides the drain that runs along Mr. and Mrs. Bryant's property and Mr. and Mrs. Camponi's property, that, the houses between where they reside and where we reside, there is a drain that runs north and south. That needs to have some consideration because there's a lot of flooding back there. So, that also needs to be taken into consideration. And then I don't know if the DEQ is going to be petitioned for these drains, just like they did for the Wellington Estate parcels. And I'm also at 19095 Pine Cone Drive. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay.
And we do have one more, Nancy Mickelson.
All right, Ms. Nicholson.
It's actually her husband, John Bresnahan. We're at
Okay.
52241 Monaco Drive. My question is somewhat covered by a previous gentleman, specifically around we're increasing or potentially increasing the number of homeowners, and we don't have a near-term solution on 23 mile expansion, 24 as mentioned before, and Romeo Plank.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Anyone else, Mr. Box?
Nope, that looks like that was everybody.
Okay. So at 7:24, I'd like to close the public portion. Do I have a motion?
So
Motion by Mr. Oliver, seconded by Mr. Shudo. Mr. Bentley, please call the roll.
24, okay. I'm sorry, that was a support by Oliver and made that motion.
I made the motion.
Mr. Shudo seconded the motion.
Okay.
That's okay. We're all a little rusty.
I was
It's been a while.
bringing all the other information.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Shudo,
Yes.
Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
Mr. Spatafor,
Yes.
and Mr. Bentley, yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Box, I would like you to do me a favor. Tonight, we're just rezoning, so Mr. Deanna doesn't really have a plan in
Correct.
place yet. Could you share with our community how the system works? Because today, we're just rezoning. We're taking it from agricultural, if we vote aye, to residential. But what's the next step after that, and the next step, and the next step that will cover all of these concerns? And then at the very end, will you talk about the roads?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So, as was mentioned by Mr. Deanna, he mentioned he would be looking to come in with the preliminary site plan in the next few months. So that is the next phase. Were this to be rezoned to residential, he would then come in with a site plan that would be presented at a meeting just like this. The public would be allowed to weigh in on it. They would, at that point, see, the layout where any roads may be or potential residential units might be, and they could make their comments at that time. Once development moves beyond the preliminary plan, then it goes through the engineering plans. That is where all of the drainage questions and any flooding, concerns would be addressed there. And then the final step would be to come back with a final plan again to this planning commission.
So
with regards to the roadways, I am not aware of anything on 24 Mile from the county to be widened. Again, those are county roads, they're not our jurisdiction. I believe they're working on 23, continuing that project to widen 23. And I do think there's some plans in the future for Romeo Plank as well. But I'm not aware of anything on 24 Mile.
So I hope that answered everybody's questions. I hope you're all still listening. Mr. Deanna has got lots to do before he even puts up a single home. So there's a lot of steps that he's got to go through with Mr. Box and the planning department. Okay. All right. Yes, Mr. Oliver.
I just have one follow-up question to Mr. Bob, so he maybe could explain to the residents when homes butt up to homes, there's no berm, and I want to confirm that. So that I think it was the Champion family asked that question, and so that was one thing I want to make sure.
Yeah, there is typically not a berm when two residential
Butt each other.
Yeah, when they have butt. Often you'll see a berm on a major roadway to prevent some of the car noise from getting into the neighborhood, but typically not between two neighborhoods.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I did have a quick question, if I could, for the petitioner.
Absolutely, Mr. Tuckfield.
So, Mr. Deanna, I think the Campions mentioned this. I think they're referring to the little tag of land that runs to the east of the main body of your parcel. Are you anticipating in part of future developments that will be part of it? Are you know what's going to happen with that land? Is that something you expect to sell off?
Yeah, so so this property does have well, I call it a finger. I believe it's about 30 feet wide. It's a strip. In talking to the township, no one really knows why it was created. It could have been some farmer agreement, something along those lines. But we are, for the better of the township, the property, the adjacent owner, we are in with the assessing department for a parcel split with the neighbor. So what we would do is we would give that piece, that finger, to next door, which I think some of the questions were pertaining to. It was a future phase of Wellington, and they would take that finger, and our piece of property would be squared off in the back. Otherwise, that finger is no good for anybody, and in fact, it would probably cause drainage problems to leave that undeveloped, where now it could be with property and development next door.
So, and obviously this is rezoning. A lot of specific questions are premature at this point, but you would expect, if that was the case, for that two parcels then to probably develop as if they were two standard parcels with no interruptions or just a standard street layout as the other streets around it are indicating.
Yes, correct. Yeah, it would be seamless, but there are a lot of restrictions when it comes to the Department of Roads and the Drain Commission and Macomb County Public Works that we have to follow. So so the road layout is going to vary on that, and also there is that drain there. So there's a lot of work we have to do, as Mr. Hardy said, on our end before we go any further.
Obviously a lot of steps. It's just it was brought up, and I think it's a good question as to what's happening. But I think I understand what you're doing, and for myself, I think that's a more than sufficient answer for the time being. So I appreciate you giving me. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Tuckfield. Anybody else? Anyone else? Do we have a motion?
Did we close the public portion?
Yeah, we did.
Excuse me, I got one last question, if I may.
The public portion is already closed, Mr. Campione, I'm sorry. Are you there?
Yeah, I muted it, so.
Okay. So do we have a motion? Anybody?
Chairman,
Yes, sir. Mr. Oliver.
I would move, we rezone this from AG to R1.
Okay, motion on the floor.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Shudo. Mr. Bentley, call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Shudo,
Yes.
Mr. Bentley, yes. Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
and Mr. Spatafor.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Let's move on to old business. Mr. Box?
There is none.
And there is none. All right, let's now move on to public comments on non-agenda items. Is there anyone that would like to speak on non-agenda items?
If you'd like to speak, please press *9 to raise your hands. Not seeing anyone.
Okay, then we will move to commissioners' comments.
Mr. Chairman, I have one comment or question to our planner. How's our sign ordinance going? And I'd like to welcome Member Spatafor to the Planning Commission.
Yeah, so we do have a solid draft that Mr. Carlisle from Carlisle Wortman put together for us for the sign ordinance. And that should be distributed very soon to you folks.
And kudos on your master plan workshop. That was very informative. I think the residents had a great opportunity to follow what we're doing, and I think we're on the right path to Great Macomb Township. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Oliver? Oh, no, we'll save you. Hold on. Mr. Bentley, anything?
No, just another welcome to Dan. Thank you. His time and interest. Welcome.
Okay, Mr. Tuckfield has already indicated no, he's good. All right, then we'll close that portion. And now we go to the ZVA liaison.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing on this with the exception that we do have a meeting in February, and I don't believe we have had one since our last plan.
Okay, back in November. Gotcha. All right. Planning.
I was a trustee and as a supervisor, so we crossed paths again. Great. Yeah. Other than that, again, welcome. So we've had, I think, 3 board of trustee meetings. All went well. We got a new supervisor, as everyone knows, going very well, working very hard. He is. If I would guess, he's probably here right now working still. And so he's taking this job on very serious for us in the community. A good working board. Everyone seems to be gelling together. We are in the process of getting a new legal department. We're also in the process of getting new HR department. We're still in the process of working in the planning department for a plan review. So them are the highlights. I don't know if any of you were around or come to the Christmas event that the planning Park and Rec put on, which is really good. It really brought a lot of people together, and the residents really gave us a lot of positive feedback from it. And them are the things that the board and supervisor and everyone involved is trying to do this community, for this community, so. Other than that, we're just buzzing right along, I would say.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
No one else? I have just a few comments of my own. Number one, I apologize for being so rusty, but November 23rd was a while ago. If you notice Mr. Oliver, everybody looks at Mr. Oliver, he has the Macomb Cultural, what do we call this, Mr. Box? Huh?
Cultivate Macomb.
Cultivate Macomb shirt on. And I'm thinking,
All right.
I'm thinking that maybe we should, I'm thinking that maybe in the next meeting, we should all wear those shirts. I think that's a great idea, and it was a nice surprise when it came in the mail from the planning department. So maybe we should put them to good use. Amen. Okay. I'd also like to thank actually our supervisor, Mr. Box, and Mr. Ivanowski, because they were all here about an hour before the meeting, and they made this visual possible. I mean, you can see our faces, and it was because of our supervisor and our planner and the IT department. They all made that happen. So thanks to them. And I think that's all I have. So at this point, planning department, did you have any items?
I do have a few things to talk about. I guess a couple of things Mr. Oliver mentioned. We are still in our search for a plan review analyst. We've done a few interviews, but we are still moving forward in our search for that. So hopefully we can get someone on board shortly and ease some of the backlog that we've got in the planning department. Mr. Shudo mentioned the sign ordinance. We've got a draft version of that, as well as we've been working on the town center, the T&D ordinance, and several other ordinances. We've got kind of a running list of some things that we would like to tackle this year. One of the things we've talked about, though, is maybe holding off a little bit until we get further along in the master plan. We don't want to rewrite an ordinance and then make some decisions in the master plan that would cause us to then rewrite it again. So that's kind of what we're thinking at this point. The master plan itself, we are in the process of drafting a draft document for you folks to review. We're probably about a month out from that or so. But you will definitely have a draft to view, and it will come obviously before the commission here.
Okay.
I did want to point out, so obviously tonight was a rezoning on our agenda. In the future, in the near future, you're probably going to start to see some township initiated rezonings. We've gone through an exercise. We have a number of parcels in the township that have what's called split zoning. So there's multiple zones located on the same parcel, and we really want to do away with that. So some of those you're going to see us initiate the rezoning in the near future, as well as a few remnant AG or agricultural parcels that are essentially residential already. They're just, like the farmhouse that sold off the property that's been developed as a subdivision. That farmhouse has stood for years and years and years as an agricultural parcel, but should be rezoned as residential. And that's it.
Okay. A motion to adjourn.
Should we have our new member? Mr. Spatafora?
Mr. Spatafora, would you like to make the motion to adjourn?
Be happy to. If there's no further discussion, I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Okay. Motion made by Mr. Spatafora.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Oliver. Mr. Bentley, call the roll.
Thank you, yes. Mr. Spatafora?
Yes.
Mr. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Bentley? Yes. Mr. Harder?
Yes.
Mr. Tuckfield?
Yes.
Mr. Shudo?
Yes.
Okay, all
All right. Then the meeting is adjourned at 7:41. Thank you, everybody.